All right. Hey, everybody. Once again, we are back on our Big Day of Giving Celebration of Science campaign. And it's been a great day of science talks. And this is the culmination of all of our talks today and our fundraising efforts. So I just want to remind everyone why we're here. And it is for the Big Day of Giving fundraising campaign. And the website below is our fundraising page to donate. And we're raising money to keep our programs free for schools that otherwise couldn't afford them. So it's super important efforts to give hands-on science education to students that really need it the most. And so for our final live stream of the day in our celebration, we are joined by Carolyn. She's a former research experience student, and then Jen as well, who was her mentor and is also our program director here at Headwaters. So I'm really excited to bring you this talk, and I think it'll be super insightful to not only hear about Carolyn's research, but to also hear about how impactful our programs can be on students' lives. So Carolyn, I'll just let you take it from here and just introduce yourself and let us know about your research experience project, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Hi, my name is Carolyn. I am from the Bay Area, Saratoga, California, and I am a junior. And I did Headwaters research on the effect on Instagram on the local high schoolers that I live in, like their self-esteem, like the impact of Instagram on the local high schoolers' self-esteem. And I overall had a really great experience at Headwaters. I think it was a really eye-opening experience because it was a program that truly let me follow my passion and follow and dive into whatever topic that I was really interested in doing, which I think was really new compared to normal science classes or other academic programs. So yeah, I think a big thing I learned from Headwaters was also that research is not as scary as I first thought, because Headwaters was actually the first time I've ever done research. It's my first exposure. So I learned everything that was new here. And I learned about the scientific method, which I've only heard in school notes or school classes, but it was really cool to actually get to implement those and actually get to discover more of what I wanted to learn about, which in case I was really interested in the impact of technology on people's mental health or self-esteem. And I thought it was a really interesting experience too, because I learned a lot from my research. So I should also summarize what I had too, right?
So you did have some surprising results because and I did as well, because I really thought that your hypothesis, you nailed your hypothesis. So if you want to kind of explain some of the surprises that you found along the way.
Yeah. So as you know, social media is a giant part of our lives now. So especially with the experiences that I experience and the experiences that I hear from my friends or people in the local area, I came up with a hypothesis that social media generally negatively impacts self-esteem, because how if you go on Instagram, you're oh, you compare yourself to what's on there, and then you think it's a waste of time and a distraction and whatnot. And what I did was that I created a survey to hand out to local to the local high schoolers. And the results I got was actually really surprising, because it actually contradicted a main part of my hypothesis, which was that social media kind of was negatively affecting self-esteem, which in my case, the results show that it generally did not. And people actually seem to actually have the opposite result. They actually felt good whenever they were using social media. We had an overwhelming 80% of the people saying that they had a positive or overly very positive experience on Instagram. So I thought that was a really interesting result, because it kind of is not what I expected. So that was something that I learned. And another thing that did confirm my views was that I initially thought that this self-esteem like all going down was because Instagram had a very superficial nature to it. And I guess that also actually was supported because one of my questions that I asked, which was like, oh, how people post about things about themselves on social media accurately depicts them in real life. A lot of people said like no. So I thought that was like really interesting because that part lined up with like my part of the hypothesis that I thought Instagram was very superficial and how people viewed Instagram as superficial. So it was like very interesting because some parts of my hypothesis were supported, but then again, like the big main part was not. So I thought it was really interesting to go into that aspect of it. And I also tried to divide some of my data into like I asked about like the demographics of like my respondents, like for example, follower numbers or like gender, or, like age. And I saw that there was like a very interesting trend with like also follower numbers because I part of my hypothesis was that the more follower numbers you have, like the people are like, oh, the more self-esteem you have because you know you have more people who are supposedly following you and be supporting you. So I divided my results by follower numbers, and it was really interesting to see that actually with the self-esteem questions that I asked like in my survey, the higher follower numbers, these I'm talking about like 700 plus followers that people marked on the survey, like these people actually did not necessarily correspond to like necessarily higher self-esteem levels because I asked multiple questions about that, and it was actually not like positive, but it was more of like sort of neutral to negative. So that was a very eye-opening sort of like experience. So it was really interesting to see like how various parts of my hypotheses were actually like supported and not supported throughout like actual testing and actual data from like people who go to my high school. So I think I learned a lot through the experience. And yeah, that was my summary of my project.
So part of that, you said that it was a way to learn the scientific method that wasn't just through notes or a book. Do you think that this would have any influence on your path into STEM careers, having this experience?
Oh, definitely. So I have always wanted to like pursue STEM like in like a college major like in the future. And I thought that like just like learning straight up from the books from classes were not like the best way to learn and like get that real hands-on experience because I know that in college you're going to have to do like research and things. So that's why I wanted to do Headwaters, and once I did it, I think it really shown me that research isn't all that like very strict and very difficult. It's actually something that like, oh, I'm interested in this, so I kind of want to discover more of this. I think it's going to be like this, and then you test, and if it's wrong, then you're like, okay, it wasn't my results. But that itself still is like a very valuable like lesson that you learned. And I think like also that's really important because in science classes that I have been part of, like usually you don't really learn about like the process of like designing an experiment, the process of like how to gather data, like what choices you have to make in order to gather data, and like what kind of choices you have to make in terms of like analyzing the data, because there's so many data that you can like analyze, especially in social sciences, that I realized. And I thought it was a really good way to get exposure to this kind of like hands-on research that I'm eventually wanting to like go into. And yeah, I think I will definitely use whatever I learned in Headwaters, including like all the steps in like research and how to design your experiment. I think that was really helpful, by the way. Thank you. And then so I think I'm going to definitely use that in the future whenever I'm going to do research. So
Yeah, and you
Great.
mentioned, you get a bunch of questions and sometimes you don't get the answers that you're looking for, but that just leads to more questions, right? So
yeah.
moving forward, I know we talked about this in your presentation, but is this something that you're going to continue to study, or are you going to go in a different direction, or you think you're going to stick with the social sciences?
I think I'm still really interested in like social sciences, especially in like the ways that technology kind of affects like society and how it affects like human behavior, because technology is so new. And I was always like fascinated by like, oh my gosh, I can't believe when my mom was young she didn't have the phone. Like I can't imagine that. But with this like rapid increase in technology, I think it's also really important to study the like societal impacts of it, because of how much like, because in like no matter how much an innovation is like good, there's always going to be like two sides to it. Like there can be a good side to it, but there can also be a bad side to it. And I think it's like kind of our jobs as like scientists or like researchers or people who just kind of explore like these kinds of impacts to kind of share this with the world in order to like help better the entire like system so that it won't like it will have like more of good hopefully than like bad. So yeah.
I'm curious, did you, after your research experience, did you like look at social media in a different way, or do you use it differently based on the data that you collected?
So I kind of focus more on like Instagram, but I think I should have like largened it a little bit. So that's like something that's also for future research now because I initially only focus on Instagram because I noticed that like Instagram in particular was like something that the community around here kind of used a lot, and also I have personal experiences with like cutting out Instagram and then feeling oh my gosh I feel so much better. So I thought that I would focus on Instagram, but I think definitely like other social media, like just social media as a whole, like looking at that would be really valuable to study.
What about, a student who, for a lot of students, science and especially science research may seem kind of unattainable or just kind of intimidating. What would you say to them but they may be still kind of interested or want to go into it, but think that it may not, may be too hard for them or may, involve, complicated things that may be above their, their abilities. What would you say to them as somebody who's maybe a little bit apprehensive about getting into something like this?
Yeah, so that was actually me. I was very apprehensive. I was like, "Oh my gosh, research is so hard because there's like so many aspects." And if you look inside like, the papers, it's like using hard language that I don't understand. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." But I think a big thing was that like the way that Headwaters was structured is that you are able to like choose your own like topic that you're really interested in, and then you're able to like go through the process. But the process itself is like kind of like clearly laid out for you to like follow through. But it's the way that you implement these processes to fit into your own research that really kind of motivated me to try to learn more and like try to like just motivated me to learn more about like research and like how to discover new things. So I think a big thing that really helped for me was the fact that like in Headwaters there was like clear steps as of like what you need to like, for example, first come up with a hypothesis, but then it's not only like come up with a hypothesis, it's like this is how you come up with a hypothesis, this is what a hypothesis is, and how like properly you have to word it in a way that it can be like either disputed or it can either be supported by the data you have. And so I think the clear steps just really helps like throughout the program. It wasn't just like a dump of like here's everything. It was more of like here's a step-by-step kind of instruction. And of course, including that is also like the mentors and the teachers along the way, because without them, I think I would have been very lost, especially in social science, which I had no previous experience in. Like it was very eye-opening to meet with like different mentors and hear about their expertise in this area and how they would approach like this choice that I want to make. For example, my choice to like do a survey opposed to like focus groups and like as opposed to like other like ways of gathering data, it was also like considered through talking with mentors and like communicating with other people. So I think a really big thing that helped me out was finding someone who is already an expert in this area, and hopefully they'll be able to mentor you so you can like ask them for help when you need them, and they can help you with kind of guiding your decisions.
Yeah, and that was a big part that impressed me so much with you was you took every single thing that we said and just immediately hit the ground. You could tell you were just so excited. And the questions you would come back with were so well thought out. And over the course of the program, we could watch you grow in that. So you learned definitely, hey, I've already learned this. Here's how I'm going to apply it here now. So you're right with the steps and everything. It was really fun for me watching you grow in that. So it was very impressive, which is why we invited you on here today. Looking at your journey and all the things that you learned, it was just so exciting to watch you grow. And Carolyn's actually about to be published with us very soon, so that's exciting as a junior in high school, which is very impressive as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sure that's going to be going on your college applications, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Nice. Awesome. Well, anything else you have, Jen?
No, just thank you so much for meeting
Yeah.
with us today. And I'm really proud of all the work you've put in. It's really paid off in a big way for you. And I'm very excited to have you published and see where you go from here. You're gonna be a world changer.
Absolutely. Yeah, and also thanks for helping us out on our Big Day of Giving fundraising campaign. We really appreciate it, and I think it was a perfect way to cap off the day of conversations with scientists and lunch with a scientist and Headwaters team members. We introduced the 2 new board members and also chatted with our executive director. So it's a huge day, and we really appreciate your time, Carolyn, and everybody's time for tuning in and for ultimately donating. So if you haven't donated yet, head to that website that's scrolling below and make a donation. And
Yep,
with
there's still
that,
time today. And the programs that we provide to the schools are a similar process to what Carolyn experienced. So you can see the value and the impact that it can have on a student. Especially, she was scared, like she said, and look at her right now, like thriving and about to be a published scientist. So that's very exciting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with that, it's a great sentiment to leave it on. And thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you.
Thank
you.